So our theme is OER and sustainability. My name is Ashley Mabbitt, and I am in the Wiley Partner Solutions team. I'm a Senior Partnership Development Manager, and I have two fantastic speakers here today who are the experts on OER. We have Rachel Fleming. Thank you for joining us, Rachel. Rachel is Scholarly Communications Librarian and Associate Professor at University of Tennessee Chattanooga. Welcome, Rachel. And we also have Stefanie Buck. Welcome, Stefanie. Stefanie is Open Educational Resources Director at Oregon State University. So we're going to start out. I'm going to ask our speakers a question or two. Then I'm going to invite them to ask each other a question, and then we'll move on to all of your questions. Why don't I start with you, Stefanie, and then Rachel, if you would like to answer this question as well. I'm curious about this question of sustainability as it relates to OER programs. I wonder if each of you would describe some of the characteristics of a sustainable versus an unsustainable OER program.
Sure, thank you. That's a great question because I think that's something that people don't necessarily consider when they're starting an OER program, is how we're actually going to maintain and continue this program. For sustainability, obviously one of the big chunks of that is where's the funding coming from? And that will depend on your institution. Some folks have institutional mandates to reduce the cost for students, and so there's institutional funding for that. At other institutions, they've gone out and gotten grants. But it's always a question that you have to ask is like, where is that funding going to come from, and how will we be able to maintain that? But going beyond just the money, which is important, it's a lot of questions about sustainability are about how are we going to actually maintain these creations that we are putting up, these open educational textbooks or resources that we've created. And when you first start a program, and I certainly was guilty of this myself, so no judgment here, you get really excited when people come and fill out your form and want the grant money, and you're like, yay. But then you've got to keep that project going, and then the next year you got to start getting new projects, and the next year you're going to start getting new projects. Well, you still have other projects going on. So the sustainability, a lot of that is project management and knowing how to handle projects that are fairly long-term. A lot of these are 1 to 2 year projects. I mean, authoring an open textbook is not something that people do in 3 months, contrary to popular belief amongst many faculty. I'll just write it over the summer. It's like, yeah, no, you're not. So thinking about what do we need to do in order to support the faculty in doing this? How are we going to maintain this momentum that we have? And what services are we going to offer to the faculty that we can actually support? If it's unsustainable, it's maybe you're offering too much. And so you have to really think about that before you start sending out the call for proposals and saying, so what are we actually going to do and what do we expect the author to do? I think faculty have a lot of experience publishing, but they don't necessarily have experience publishing textbooks. And so they don't necessarily know what a good textbook is. They don't necessarily, I mean, they know what a good textbook is, but not necessarily how to write one. And so thinking about how I'm going to support my faculty as they go through this process is another thing that you want to think about before you really dive into sending out the grant call for proposals or whatever it is that you happen to do. I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Yeah, when I think about kind of what is sustainability, like in a broader kind of ecosystem view, I want to, be part of creating this culture of OER where faculty can and do have community and ability to create materials, and that is rewarded and compensated, but that's all kind of like way out there. As far as things that I can control, it's that what services am I offering? Am I able to predict how much time that takes and manage that kind of into my daily routine. And if counterpoint to that is unsustainably would be if I were reinventing the service every single time that I'm doing it. So as I've grown my program to, we're at 5-6 books now, I'm already at this point where I have to know how much can I predict how much time offering this service will be. Can I explain to a faculty what I can offer them and what they'll need to do clearly in a way that they understand? And can I, provide alternate routes to other services that they might require?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think being very clear with faculty expectations up front is very, very, very important. And I love the faculty. They're wonderful people, but they will get away with as much as they possibly can in terms of not, citing their sources or, those kinds of things. It's really interesting. It's a phenomenon. I think we need to do a PhD dissertation on that at some point. Why do faculty do this, but they won't let their students get away with it? But clarification up front is really key. And I put this in our memorandum of understanding, which I go through with each individual who has created an OER with us, to say, here's our responsibility, here's your responsibility. And you need to be very clear on that. Because again, they will find loopholes. They're very creative about that. It's kind of fun. And as I change my MOU almost every single time, I tweak it because some faculty member has come up with something that I hadn't thought of. So there are plenty of examples of MOUs out there from organizations that have robust OER programs. So like the Open Education Network has examples, and I know that I'm pretty sure that Affordable Learning Georgia has theirs up, and SUNY and a few other places. Having that figured out ahead of time will help you know what kind of resources you need and will help you plan for the future. I think that's really a vital key component. And I confess, I did not do this well when I first came into this program in 2019. We had a program at Oregon State in 2014, and it was sort of a free-for-all. Hi, here's your money, here's your access to press books, knock yourself out approach to open educational resources, which is how a lot of people start, which is fine. But that's not really, I think, sustainable in many ways because you don't have any control over the quality and the content that you're having your faculty members put up. So sustainability also refers to content and content creation and content maintenance. What's your plan? How are you going to, once this book is 5 years old, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to treat it? So I have what I call a retention schedule where I outline very clearly in the MOU that after a certain amount of time, we will no longer check the books for links, errors, and stuff like that. We will put a message on the book that it's no longer being updated, so it's very clear to the users that we're not, tracking this. But those are things that need to be decided early on. And like I said, I can't claim that I was brilliant at this when I did it, but learn from my mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's very understandable. Faculty are very excited about the prospect of there being an OER in their area, and they're very excited about content. The bridge between there being content and there being an OER that looks good and feels good to use, that's the bridge that you are crossing. And that's the publishing process, really. Making something from an idea to a finished product, and you're kind of dragging them along. Accessibility, layout, all those kinds of things are not, and understandably, not what the faculty are into.
You want the faculty to concentrate on content because they're the content matter experts, and that's their job, right? But in this field of OER, depending on how your program is set up, you are acting as a publisher, and I struggled with that for a very long time when I first started this position. I was like, we're not a publisher, we're a service. We're helping faculty out doing this kind of stuff. And my colleague kept saying, no, Stefanie, you're a publisher. And I finally sort of came around and said, yeah, actually we are. We are acting like a publisher. We're the combining the best of the publishing world and the best of open educational resources into one process, and borrowing from both of those areas in order to make a quality product. And so the mindset may be a little bit different. You may be kind of feeling, well, yeah, we can give out some money, and we can have we can have press books, we can have people, doing this stuff, and you can do that. There are some places that do that. I think it depends on what you want to be, and I think you need to ask yourself those questions early on. Do we want to be just kind of a service, or do we want to actually be an OER publisher? And there's a lot of gray area in between.
Excellent. Thank you both. So there are two things I want to ask each of you about that you've mentioned. One of which is, Rachel, something you mentioned to me yesterday that I think might be interesting to others here was when you talk with faculty who are interested in creating an OER, and you're basically asking them to really think through what it is they're looking to accomplish. Would you share a bit about that?
Yeah. So when somebody comes to you with some interest, or if you go out and try and develop some interest, in a lot of ways you're kind of an acquisitions editor in the publishing process, but you're also I'm coming at them as a librarian, talking to a faculty member who has a lot of other responsibilities and pressures. So I need them to be very aware of how long the project may take, and to be really realistic about what are their priorities. If they're junior faculty and they need to be working towards tenure and promotion, and their department is not friendly towards pedagogy as scholarship, that's something that I need to take into account and say, I want to support you in developing, affordable resources for your classes, but maybe this open textbook project is something that we can, come back to in 4 years when you have tenure.
Excellent, thank you. And then, Stefanie, you mentioned a moment ago, in terms of funding, that's a really important factor. I've actually spoken with one librarian who mentioned that the provost on campus initially super excited about supporting an OER program. Then the following year, So what strategies have you found effective to kind of, I assume that you would need to prove the effectiveness of what's going on already. If that's the case, how do you do that? Do you have other techniques that have been effective?
Yeah, so I'm not actually funded by the provost at my institution. I'm in the Division of Educational Ventures, which is a new title, which includes alternative credentials, workforce development, our eCampus, which is our remote learning, and the OER unit, and our research unit. So we're kind of an oddball, and they're the ones, the Division of Educational Ventures is actually the one that fund me, so I'm not dependent on the provost. But that doesn't mean that I don't have to prove what we're doing and show my ROI. And one of the ways that I do that now, and it depends on your audience as to what information you want to share with them. Administration, generally speaking, likes to hear about dollars saved. So I have a website. It's not Google Analytics anymore. Looker Studio website, where I track how much money we have saved by faculty using low cost, which is for us below $40, and no cost course materials. And I update that every term. And it's kind of a pain, but when you can say, hey, we've saved the students $18 million, that catches people's attention. So you have to kind of think about who your audience is. For faculty, the savings is important, but so is the pedagogy, and so is the student success. So with folks like that, I will share recent examples of a very successful course where we've transitioned from a commercial textbook to an OER. We ask the students to provide feedback on the OER textbook. How did they do? Sometimes the faculty will do pre and post tests, and we can show that they've done better or just as well with the OER as they did with the commercial textbook. So it kind of depends on your audience, but I do think that's something else that's very important in terms of sustaining your program, is showing the return on investment and showing that you have you've actually made an impact on the students. The other thing that I like that we do for faculty is that we have a little dashboard on their open educational resource on their textbook. They have a little dashboard button, and they can go and they can see how many times the book has been downloaded, how many times it's been viewed. There's a little map so they can, see it all over the world. They love it. They absolutely love it. And that too is impact. So showing them, this is what you can get out of it. It's not just we're saving your students money, which is important to a lot of faculty. That's a lot of faculty get into this. They're like, that's interesting. 65% of my students don't purchase my textbook. Well, that's a problem. But then to also show them that there are people all over the world using your textbook is a great way of encouraging them and rewarding them. Unfortunately, we can't pay them what they should be paid for writing these open textbooks, but we can reward them in other ways, hopefully. So that also helps grow the program.
A new area that I've been exploring related to ROI is recruitment. And that works at all levels, from faculty, programs, especially at the program level, and then also, at the university level, we're all looking for more students, and a low-cost program where you could have a lot of course, like a Z degree or any other kind of program where you're offering it for a low cost is something that you can sell to students.
Excellent. So I'd like to invite both of you to ask each other a question, actually. Rachel, maybe you'd like to start by asking Stefanie a question.
I do have a question. So Stefanie, you're based in Oregon, yes. And Open Oregon is one of the oldest statewide ventures that we have. So when I think you're in Oregon, I think, you've got so many resources and support, but I actually have no idea how the collaboration between Open Oregon and individual institutions work. So can you talk about what kind of support they offer you and what you're on your own with?
Yeah, so Oregon State University, and that is my institution, and I do the open educational resources for that particular institution. I publish works that are created by faculty who are at Oregon State. Sometimes they collaborate with other authors at other institutions, but primarily it's Oregon State authors. Open Oregon Educational Resources, so just not to get yourself confused, is the umbrella organization kind of all 20, or not all 20, but 20 institutions in Oregon who are working on OER programs or some sort of affordable learning programs. We like to use the word affordable learning because it allows us to pull in some more things that go beyond OER. Amy Hoffer is the director of the Open Oregon Educational Resources, and she provides a lot of support for us. We have quarterly meetings where we all get together and discuss issues and concerns. She puts together grants. We have a huge grant right now, or she has a huge grant, I shouldn't say we, for a couple of textbooks in social work and criminal justice and sociology that's being worked on. She has an instructional designer working for her who can provide instructional design support for projects. And it's just nice to have that community to hang out with, because in most cases, you're going to be the only person at your institution doing this, and you kind of feel a little like, I don't have anybody to talk to. And so having that community support and having people say, oh yeah, I have that problem too, has been really instrumental. But and she does provide a little bit of funding to the institutions. It's not a ton of money, but there's some of that. We do an annual symposium So getting faculty excited about OER and showing off projects that have been completed. So we do that. So yeah, there's a lot actually going on with, and there is a blog that she runs, the Open Oregon Educational Resources blog that you can, where sometimes we guest post, but you know, she posts webinars and professional development and those kinds of things. So yeah, there's a good support network in Oregon. I think that's not always going to be the case for everybody, but I think if there is a possibility to get together with the other OER geeks in your neighborhood, it's worth doing, because you will find that having somebody else to just kind of say, I don't know what to do with this project or whatever is a really beneficial thing. Because like I said, you're probably going to be the only person at your institution doing this.
In Tennessee, we're trying to grow that network, and the TLDR of our Open Education 2023 conference presentation that happened yesterday it's really hard, but we just need to talk to each other more. It's and resist the pressure that we don't have enough time to, because we get so much out of whenever we're able to gather.
So Rachel, I have a question for you, and that is, at your institution, let's see, what are some of the things that you've found in your program that are really important to let faculty know right up front? And how do you let them know right up front? What kind of faculty support services do you offer, and how have those developed over time?
Yeah, I think knowing the boundary of what I'm able to offer as kind of a one-man shop is increasingly important to me. So there's kind of a fuzzy line in a lot of them to say, like, yeah, I can do some copyright clearing work, but not a lot. You know, I can very poorly copy edit your work, but if you need some real copy editing, we're going to have to go and get it somewhere. So I start every conversation with faculty about what they want, and one of the things that I like about having a grant program is that it's able to allocate my time and designate that I am working on that project and able to complete it, but they can drag on for a very long time. So knowing upfront to say, what are you trying to do? What are your goals? What do you need? And you know, how much involvement from me do you want? I've had faculty who do just go away for the summer and come back with a textbook.
Wow. Tell me how you did that.
A big-ish grant.
A big-ish grant, yeah. I think that's really important, is to, like I said, set those faculty expectations early on and have those one-on-one conversations. One thing that I harped on a lot at my institution was I was trying to come up with a perfect workflow for for all textbooks, and there is no such thing, because every textbook is unique and has its own unique challenges, which makes it fun. You know, that's the kind of the cool part. It's like, how are we going to do this? But it means that there's a lot of individual work that you have to do for each individual book. So kind of knowing that, rather than saying, well, it's simple, they just hand us a manuscript and we pop it into Pressbooks, does not work that way.
It seems like every project I've fallen into a pit of having to learn a new skill that's taken me weeks. So I had a project that was an engineering lab manual, but it had been made in 2001 in Word, and I had a student assistant spend an entire semester converting formulas so that it would be accessible. Because that's what it takes, and I'm not going to put out a product that's not accessible. But you know, I know so many Adobe skills that I don't want to have, but you have to be able to get to the level that you're comfortable putting out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm fortunate that I have an assistant director. He's very good at CSS and HTML and that kind of stuff, so he does a lot of playing around in the background to make the Pressbook really super pretty and functional. And we have two students that work for us. One is a graphic designer, and one is a sort of a we call them a student editor. They're not really doing editorial work. They're just putting content into Pressbooks. I don't let my faculty into the back end of Pressbooks. We used to, and I've stopped because I feel like I'm concerned about the quality of the product that we're putting out, and I have no control over it if I let the faculty into the back end of Press. Do you let the faculty into the back end?
Well, we have just started with Pressbooks, so you've made me think maybe I shouldn't, because I too have a student who's working on it, and I love to switch over to the HTML code side and make sure that things are up to my standard. So yeah, it is an issue.
And I have a lot of respect for Pressbooks. We use it a lot. We have about, 45 or 50 open educational resources that we've published, mostly in Pressbooks. It's not an easy process to get content into Pressbooks. Like, there's upload the Word document, but if the Word document is not formatted properly, it's going to be messy in Pressbooks. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that has prevented me from saying to the faculty, here, go and knock yourself out. Although they want to often. They will, I just want to go in and tweak a few things. It's like, no, sorry. And I'm very upfront with them about that. They know that. We have a process where we have an errata form in our textbooks. So if there's a mistake, they can email us, or somebody else is viewing the textbook and finds an error, they can email us. We will go in. We check that every day. It's just a Google form. And then we go and make those fixes if they're like typos or something like that. If it's something more complex, like this formula is wrong, I'm not touching that. That goes back to the faculty author.
Do you gather adoption information from a form or anything on your books?
We don't, and I would like to start doing that. I mean, it's not obviously going to be perfect because not everybody's going to fill in their adoption information, but I think it would be a good idea to do that. I would certainly encourage people to do that. Our data dashboard kind of tells us who's adopting, not really, but if we see that there's like 50 people who downloaded the textbook who are in Amherst, Massachusetts, it's like, probably the university is using it as a textbook. So we can kind of guess. But adoption is really important, and so yeah, I think having something, and you can put it like in the front matter or something like that says, hey, if you're adopting this textbook, let us know what course it is, let us know how it works. That's a very useful thing to do.
It's one of the things that allows the faculty to have something to say about the impact of their work, to get the recognition that they deserve for the writing of the textbooks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is really something else to think about. And there's so much to think about, but that's something else to think about. Yeah. Is, how are you going to recognize your faculty, and what are they going to get out of this? I mean, this is a labor of love, and we have to recognize that. I'm never going to be able to give them the $50,000 that they should get for writing this textbook. That's just not going to happen. So what else can we do to help them get the recognition that they deserve? And sometimes there's not a whole lot we can do because of the tenure structure and how their departments are, and those kinds of things. We came up with a little badge kind of thing that we give to faculty who use low-cost or no-cost textbooks, and it's called the Affordability Matters badge. And so they can just pop that into their Canvas site. We use Canvas at Oregon State, and so the students can see that.
Like a Quality Matters badge?
Sort of, yeah, it's a riff on Quality Matters.
There you go.
So it's like a Quality Matters badge. It says Affordability Matters, and then it links to a website where it says, hey, your faculty, your professor has decided to use an openly licensed textbook or a low-cost material because they want to save you money. Cool. They love it. They ask for it. They have a little form they fill out, and then I just send them one. And it's a minor thing, but it does kind of acknowledge the work that they've done in some ways. That's another thing that Open Oregon Educational Resources does. So our umbrella organization, we have that symposium that I mentioned every year. We also have OER Champions Awards through Open Oregon. And so we nominate our faculty for an OER Champion Award. And that's something that they can put on their resume. I mean, that's cool, So we do that. So those kinds of other recognitions is important, I think, in terms of, and I think that in terms of sustaining your program is important, because if people don't feel like their work is being recognized, they're not going to come back and do another edition. They're not going to, tell their friends about it and say, hey, you guys really should do an open educational resource or something like that. So that is a sustainability issue.
Excellent. Thank you both for sharing all of these insights. I think affordability matters could also be, the title of this program, or certainly a great motto for all of what we're talking about. So I would love to hear from anybody who has a question in the room. As I said a minute ago, we do have a question that was submitted. Yes, please walk right up to